The camera is already rolling when Ray Elco sits down. He doesn't introduce himself. He doesn't look at the camera right away. He sets a folded piece of paper on the table in front of him, doesn't open it, and stares at it for a moment like he's deciding something. Then he looks up. October 14th, 2003. 3 men went into Shaft 7. 2 came out. He says it the way someone reads a maintenance log. Flat, precise, like the number has been in his mouth so long it no longer has weight. Ray Elco spent 19 years working extraction operations across northern Nevada. Certified blasting technician, MSHA trained, 2 commendations from the Nevada Division of Minerals for incident-free operations on back-to-back contracts in Lander County. He is 61 years old in this recording. He is sitting in room 14 of a budget motel off US 95 in Winnemucca, Nevada. He requested no lighting equipment. The overhead fluorescent is enough, he said. He wanted it to look like what it was, a man telling the truth in a bad room. He has told this account 4 times. Once to his foreman, the night it happened. Once to the mining company safety officer, who typed while Ray talked and never made eye contact. Once to a man Ray describes only as someone connected to the county, who arrived unannounced at his home in Elko 3 weeks after the job ended. And now here. Each time, he says, the details have stayed the same. He is not interested in being believed. He is interested in the record existing. I'm not telling you this because I want something from it, he says. I'm telling you because there are 3 other crews contracted to work that corridor in the next 2 years. And what I know, what we found, nobody passed that on. Nobody filed it where it could be read. He unfolds the paper. It's a hand-drawn map. Shaft designations, depth markers, a single circled location marked in red pen. Shaft 7. 340 feet below the surface of a stretch of high desert that most people drive past without slowing down. He smooths the paper flat with 2 fingers. Let me start with the mine. The mine has no operating name on current county records. It appears in the Humboldt County Land Registry as Parcel 7114C, a decommissioned silver extraction site in the Sonoma Range, approximately 23 miles northeast of Winnemucca. It was opened in 1887 by the Consolidated Basin Mining Company, expanded twice between 1901 and 1919, and formally abandoned in 1961 following a partial collapse in the lower shaft network that killed 2 workers and was never fully investigated. The company dissolved the same year, liability transferred to a holding entity that no longer exists. For 40 years, the site was fenced, posted, and ignored. In 1999, a man named Clifford Winnemucca appeared before the Humboldt County Land Management Office. He was 74 years old. He was a cultural preservationist for the Shoshone-Paiute community and had held that role formally and informally for over 3 decades. He submitted a written statement requesting that Parcel 7114C be permanently restricted from commercial reentry. His statement cited the site's location within a boundary his community referred to in internal records as a Ponequich zone, a term that does not translate cleanly into English, but which Clifford's written statement described as a threshold place, where the boundary between the surface world and something older has been made thin by repeated contact. The land office stamped it received. It was filed under cultural and religious objections, non-binding. No further action was taken. Ray obtained a copy of that filing 17 months after leaving the site. He keeps it with the map. The contract Ray's crew was hired under came through a mid-tier extraction company called Basin Reclamation LLC, incorporated in Reno in 2001.
The job was a survey and partial re-entry operation, not full extraction. The stated purpose was to assess structural integrity in the upper 2 shaft networks and catalog any remaining ore deposits for potential future licensing. Standard work. 12-day contract, 6-man crew. Ray was brought on as site supervisor and lead blasting technician. His second was a man named Dale Pruitt, 17 years in hard rock mining, previously worked a Cortez Hills operation in Lander County. Survey lead was a geologist named Patricia Osman, contracted independently, who had worked 3 previous reclamation assessments in the same county corridor. The remaining 3 crew members, Marcus Webb, a young equipment operator named Tyler Riss, and a shaft ventilation specialist named Gordon Falk, had varying levels of experience, none below 5 years. Professional crew. Documented qualifications, routine assignment. Ray pauses here in the recording. He picks up the hand-drawn map and holds it flat on the table, oriented so the camera can see Shaft 7's position relative to the entry point. Nobody told us about the 1961 collapse report, he says. Not the full version. We got a summary that said structural instability, 2 fatalities, sealed and closed. What we didn't get, what Basin Reclamation either didn't have or didn't pass on, was the secondary report, the one the original company filed internally before they dissolved. He sets the map down. That report had a 3rd fatality, one they didn't disclose publicly, and a notation in the site log that read, "Do not re-enter below 280 feet. It is still present." He lets that sit. Nobody told us that either. They arrived on site October 11th, 2003, a Saturday. The drive in from the highway takes 40 minutes on an unmarked gravel road that runs northeast through scrub and dry wash. The elevation sits at approximately 5,400 feet.
In October, the high desert at that altitude runs cold before noon and gets colder fast after 3 in the afternoon. The crew set up a base camp of 3 equipment trailers inside the old fenced perimeter, which was still largely intact. The main shaft entry, a reinforced timber and corrugated steel portal, original construction patched sometime in the 1940s, was padlocked with a Basin Reclamation chain that Ray cut on arrival. First entry was 9:14 in the morning. Ray describes the upper shaft network as structurally sound, which surprised him. 60-year-old hard rock mines in the Basin and Range corridor tend to deteriorate fast. Groundwater infiltration, freeze-thaw cycling, seismic microactivity. Most unattended sites in this region show significant wall fracturing and ceiling sag within 2 decades. Parcel 7114C showed almost none. The primary tunnel, designated Shaft 1 on the original survey maps, ran 180 feet at a gradual descent before branching into 3 laterals. Walls were dry, ceiling intact, timber supports original but load-bearing. Patricia Osman noted it in her field log on day 1. Ray quotes it from memory. Upper network preservation inconsistent with site age and abandonment duration. Possible explanation, microclimate stability. Requires further assessment. She didn't have a further explanation. Neither did anyone else. Temperature at the branch point was 51 degrees Fahrenheit, standard for that depth. By 200 feet, it had dropped to 44, also standard. Ray had worked colder. The crew ran a ventilation line from the surface blower and set up task lighting along the primary tunnel at 30 feet intervals. Procedurally, everything was by the book. They worked the upper laterals through the afternoon, cataloged ore vein remnants, mapped ceiling load distribution, photographed wall composition at 20-foot intervals. Gordon Falk ran air quality checks every 90 minutes. All readings normal. Carbon monoxide negligible. Oxygen levels stable. It was Tyler Riss who noticed it first. He mentioned it quietly, almost as an aside while they were pulling equipment at the end of the shift. He said there was a smell in the left lateral, the branch that ran roughly northwest toward the deeper shaft network, that didn't match anything he'd encountered in previous mine work. He described it as copper and wet hide, like a skinned animal left in a metal container. Dale Pruitt said it was probably a dead bat colony. Gordon Falk said it might be a sulfur compound reacting with residual groundwater. Patricia Osman wrote it in her field log without a hypothesis attached. Ray said nothing. He had smelled it too, earlier than Tyler, around 140 feet in, before the branch point, before anyone else had mentioned anything. He had made a note of it mentally and said nothing, because he had no framework for it yet. He did not sleep well that night. He does not say why. He moves directly to the next morning. Day 2 began at 7:40 in the morning. Gordon Falk ran his standard pre-entry air check at the shaft portal. Clean. Ray signed the entry log, noted the temperature, 38 degrees Fahrenheit at the surface, dropping fast, and led the first team in at 8:02. The plan was to push further into the lateral network, assess the condition of Shaft 3 and Shaft 4, and begin preliminary mapping of the route toward the 1961 collapse zone in Shaft 7. A full day's work. Nothing extraordinary on paper. The first instrument failure happened at 9:17. Dale Pruitt was running a laser distance measuring unit in Shaft 3, approximately 190 feet below the surface. The device reset without input, cycled through its startup sequence, and returned a distance reading of 0. He powered it off, powered it back on, and it functioned normally for the next 4 hours. He logged it as a battery irregularity. Ray noted it, but didn't escalate. At 11:44, the motion sensor array, 3 units set at 100-foot intervals along the primary tunnel as a standard safety measure,
triggered Unit 2. Unit 2 was positioned at 340 feet below the surface, inside a section of tunnel the crew had not yet entered. Ray was at 180 feet when the alert came through on the surface monitor. He stopped, checked the readout twice, asked Gordon over the radio whether anyone had pushed past the 280-foot mark. No one had. Gordon reset the sensor. It did not trigger again that morning. No explanation was logged because no explanation existed. Marcus Webb said nothing about the sensor. He ate lunch at the equipment trailer, sitting apart from the rest of the crew, and when Dale called the afternoon team back to the portal at 12:55, Marcus did not stand up. Ray walked over, asked him directly. Marcus looked at the shaft entry for a long moment and then said quietly that he wasn't going back in that day. Ray asked why. Marcus said he didn't know, that he just wasn't going back in. Ray had known Marcus Webb for 6 years, 2 previous contracts. Marcus was not a cautious man. He was not prone to hesitation or vague discomfort. Ray looked at him for a moment, nodded, and told him to run surface checks for the afternoon. He did not push further. He has thought about that decision every day since. The afternoon shift was uneventful. Ray notes this specifically. Not quietly uneventful, not almost uneventful, completely clean. 4 hours of standard work. The smell in the northwest lateral was gone. Instruments functioned normally. Nobody mentioned anything unusual. At 2:47 in the morning, Ray woke up in his bunk in the equipment trailer. He lay still and listened. The sound was on the roof. Not wind. He had worked enough outdoor sites to separate wind from contact. This was rhythmic, spaced.
Like something moving slowly across the trailer roof in a straight line, from the rear corner to the front, then stopping directly above where he was lying. He did not move for 11 minutes. In the morning, the steel vent cover on shaft 4, a 14-gauge corrugated panel bolted from above, was found lying 6 feet from the shaft opening, bent outward from below. Ray photographed it before anyone touched it. He still has that photograph. He did not tell the crew what he had heard the night before. Day 3, October 13th. The decision to push toward the Shaft 7 collapse zone was made the previous evening. Patricia Osman had enough upper network data to satisfy the survey contract. The collapse zone assessment was the final deliverable. Confirm the debris wall integrity, photograph the obstruction, note any accessible cavity beyond the fall line if one existed, and withdraw. Estimated time underground, 4 hours. Ray led. Patricia and Dale followed. Tyler Riss stayed at 200 feet to manage the ventilation line. Gordon Falk ran surface monitoring. Marcus Webb had not re-entered the mine since the previous afternoon and had not explained why. Ray assigned him equipment inventory and did not revisit it. The route to Shaft 7 ran through the northwest lateral, the same branch where the smell had been strongest on day 1. It was present again that morning. Stronger. Patricia noted it in her field recorder at 9:23, describing it as a biological compound she couldn't identify, distinctly organic, with a secondary metallic undertone. She hypothesized decaying organic material in a sealed pocket, possibly predating the 1961 closure. She revised that hypothesis 50 minutes later. The debris wall at the Shaft 7 collapse zone was located at 310 feet below the surface. It was substantial, ceiling to floor rockfall, compacted over decades, running approximately 22 feet in depth based on probe measurements.
Standard collapse profile for a mid-century blasting accident. Ray documented the face of the debris wall, while Patricia took structural samples. Dale found the opening at 9:58. It was not visible from the main approach. A section of the debris wall's lower right corner, roughly 3 feet high, 4 feet wide, had been cleared, not collapsed further, cleared. The rock fragments were stacked to one side in a rough pile, largest pieces at the base, as though sorted by weight. Ray estimated the total mass moved at somewhere between 800 and 1,200 pounds. There was no equipment on site capable of that work. There had been no crew beyond this point. Ray photographed the opening, the cleared debris pile, and the tunnel floor immediately in front of it, before anyone moved. Then he and Dale went through. The cavity beyond the debris wall was approximately 40 feet long, 18 feet wide, and 11 feet at its highest point. It was not a natural formation. Natural cavities in this geology present with irregular surfaces, water scoring, and random fracture patterns. This space had geometry, not engineered geometry, not blasted or drilled, but shaped by something that had applied consistent pressure to the same surfaces repeatedly over a long period of time. The walls were scored floor to ceiling with deep parallel marks. Ray took out his measuring tape. 14 inches between each set of marks, consistent across every wall surface. He measured 6 separate sections, 14 inches, every time. The scoring was not shallow. In places it ran 3/4 of an inch into solid rock. Patricia did not speak for the first 4 minutes inside the cavity. Ray's audio recorder was running. He reviewed the recording later. There is a period of 41 seconds where no one says anything, and the only sound is ventilation airflow in the small movements of 3 people trying to understand what they are looking at. At the center of the cavity floor was a depression, ovoid.
Approximately 9 feet long, 4 feet wide, 6 inches deep, shaped into the rock rather than broken into it. It was packed with compressed biological material. Patricia identified deer remains, rabbit, what appeared to be elk bone, and at least 2 species she cannot identify on site. The material was not recent. She estimated the oldest layers at between 40 and 60 years. Some layers were newer. The most recent material was less than 3 months old. Ray stood at the edge of the depression and looked at it for a long time. That was its place, he says in the recording. That was where it slept, or rested, or whatever it does, and we were standing in it. He pauses, and somewhere between the surface and where we were standing, it already knew. They were back on the surface by 1:15 in the afternoon. Ray does not describe the exit in detail. He says they moved at a steady pace, did not run, did not speak inside the tunnel. He says that was instinctive, not a decision any of them made consciously, but something the 3 of them arrived at simultaneously, without discussion. Patricia had her field recorder running the entire way out. When Ray listened to it later, he counted his own footsteps. Steady, even. He does not know how. He called Clifford Winnemucca at 2:30 from the satellite phone at the surface camp. He had the number from the county filing he had obtained months earlier, cross-referenced against a tribal cultural office directory. He had carried it into the field without a clear reason. He understood the reason now. Clifford answered on the 3rd ring. Ray introduced himself, identified the site by parcel number, and began to describe what the crew had found in the cavity beyond shaft 7. He got as far as the scored walls before Clifford stopped him. "How many of you went past the debris wall?" Ray said 3. There was a silence on the line that Ray estimates at between 15 and 20 seconds. Not the silence of someone thinking.
The silence of someone absorbing a specific piece of information they had hoped not to receive. Then Clifford spoke for 4 minutes without interruption. He did not ask for further description of the cavity. He did not express surprise. He gave Ray 3 instructions in a sequence, stated plainly without elaboration on the first call. Ray wrote them on the back of his hand with a marker because he had nothing else available. No open flame below 300 feet. No individual enters the shaft network alone for any reason at any time. The crew must be off the site before the end of the 3rd night. That night was the 3rd night. Clifford then used the term in Shoshone that Ray cannot reproduce phonetically with confidence. In the recording, he attempts it twice and stops. He says Clifford translated it, loosely, as the one that counts the living. Ray asked what that meant practically. Clifford said it meant exactly what it described, that the thing cataloged occupants, that it registered how many entered a space and tracked that number with precision, that it did not act randomly, it acted on information. Ray asked how old the knowledge of this thing was. Clifford said that was the wrong question. He said the right question was how long it had been in that specific location. He said the answer to that question was longer than the mine, longer than any structure humans had built in that corridor. The mine had been dug into its space, not the other way around. Ray relayed the 3 rules to the crew at 3:10 in the afternoon. Dale Pruitt nodded and started breaking down equipment immediately without being asked. Tyler Riss asked if they were being serious. Gordon Falk began packing his monitoring station without a word. Marcus Webb, who had not been underground since the previous afternoon, looked at Ray and said, "I already knew. I just didn't know what I knew." 2 men quit on the spot. Ray does not identify which 2 in the recording. He says it doesn't matter. He says what matters is that the rule about the 3rd night had already been broken before he had received it. They were still on site. The sun was going down. The equipment breakdown should have taken 90 minutes. It took 4 hours. Ray does not assign blame for this. He describes it as a cascade of mechanical and logistical failures that individually would have been minor inconveniences on any other job. Collectively, on that specific night, they constituted a problem he could not resolve before dark. The primary ventilation blower, a 400-pound diesel unit rented through Basin Reclamation, would not start for extraction. The ignition relay had corroded.
possibly from the temperature differential between day and night at that elevation. Without it running, the retrieval cable for the ventilation line inside the shaft could not be tensioned and pulled from the surface. Leaving the line inside overnight meant either abandoning $14,000 worth of rented equipment or sending someone in to detach it manually at the 180-foot junction point. Ray made the decision himself. His crew. His call. He entered Shaft 1 at 8:47 in the evening. He carried a hard hat-mounted lamp, a handheld backup light, and his radio. The ventilation line junction was at 180 feet, a straight shot down the primary tunnel, no branching required. Estimated time underground, 12 minutes. He told Dale his radio channel and told him to respond every 2 minutes on the clock. The primary tunnel was unchanged, task lighting still active on the 30-foot intervals, running on the surface generator. Temperature at the 100-foot mark was 43 degrees. Ray moved at a steady pace and reached the ventilation junction at 9:02. He detached the cable coupling, secured the line end to the wall anchor, and confirmed the retrieval mechanism was free. 11 minutes underground. He turned to walk out. The lamp caught the movement at 9:04. He was at the far end of the primary tunnel.
The tunnel ran straight for approximately 60 feet beyond the ventilation junction, before the branch point, the intersection that led left toward the northwest lateral and Shaft 7. The task lighting at that distance was at the edge of its effective range, shadows compounded beyond 50 feet. Something was standing at the branch point. Ray stopped walking. He describes the process of what he saw with the precision of a man who has reconstructed the image thousands of times. Bipedal, standing upright with a posture that was not quite vertical, a slight forward inclination at the upper torso, as though the ceiling height, which was 7 feet at that section, was insufficient. That detail registers first in his account, because it establishes scale before he states a number. He estimates the height at between 8 and 8.5 feet. The limb proportions were wrong relative to the torso, arms that cleared the midpoint of what should have been the lower leg. The head was not distinct from the shoulders in the way a human silhouette is distinct. There was mass there, but the transition was continuous. It was facing him. It did not move. Ray did not move. He counts the time himself in the recording, speaking the seconds aloud from memory as though re-entering the moment. 4 minutes and approximately 20 seconds. He says the stillness was not passive, it was attentive. The quality of it was the quality of something registering information, not something frozen in fear or confusion. His radio crackled at the 2-minute mark. Dale's voice, confirming channel. Ray did not respond. He could not explain why in the moment. He says now that responding felt like it would change a variable he did not want changed. At 4 minutes and roughly 20 seconds, it was gone. Not retreating, not turning. Present, then not present. The task light at the branch point continued burning. The tunnel was empty. Ray walked out at a steady pace. He did not run until he reached the surface.
He told Dale what he saw. Dale did not respond immediately. He looked at the shaft entry for a moment, then at Ray, then back at the shaft. Then he said they needed to get the remaining crew to the vehicles and leave the ventilation line. Ray agreed. The problem was Marcus Webb. Marcus had not been at the equipment trailer when Ray surfaced. Dale had last seen him 20 minutes earlier, walking toward the secondary equipment shed at the eastern edge of the perimeter, a corrugated steel structure used to store the survey team's core sample equipment. The shed was approximately 90 feet from the shaft portal. Dale had assumed he was running inventory. He had not checked since. Ray called Marcus on the radio 3 times between 9:09 and 9:14. No response. Tyler Riss and Gordon Falk were at the primary trailer. Ray told them to get in the truck, doors locked, engine running, and not to get out for any reason. Tyler started to ask a question. Ray did not wait for it. He and Dale moved to the equipment shed at 9:16. Marcus was not there. The shed door was open. The interior was undisturbed. Marcus's radio was on the workbench inside. Powered on, volume up. Ray picked it up. Still on channel. He set it back down. Dale pointed at the ground outside the shed's eastern wall. The soil at that elevation in October holds boot prints cleanly. There was a single track leading away from the shed toward the old Shaft 3 access point, a secondary entry portal on the eastern face of the mine site, partially obscured by decades of scrub growth that the crew had cleared and assessed on day 1 but had not used since. The boot prints were Marcus's size. They walked directly to the Shaft 3 portal and did not return. Ray and Dale entered Shaft 3 at 9:21. Shaft 3 ran parallel to the primary tunnel, but at a steeper descent angle, reaching 220 feet before connecting to the lateral network via a crosscap passage at the 190-foot level. The task lighting in Shaft 3 had been partially broken down earlier that afternoon. Ray's hard hat lamp and Dale's handheld covered roughly 30 feet of visible tunnel ahead. They found Marcus at the 80-foot mark. He was standing against the left wall, facing it, both palms flat against the rock, not moving. Ray touched his shoulder, and Marcus turned around with the slow, mild disorientation of someone waking from a deep sleep. His eyes were open, and had been open. He was not unconscious. He looked at Ray and said, with complete calm, that he had needed to come in here. He could not explain further. Ray took his arm and they began moving toward the surface. At the 60-foot mark, Ray heard it in the wall. Not behind them, not ahead. Inside the rock to the right, the lateral wall separating shaft 3 from the cross-cut passage network. Movement. Deliberate, measured repositioning. Something large navigating the connecting passages at a pace that was, Ray realized, calibrated to their own. Not chasing. Tracking. Moving to a point ahead of them. Ray told Dale and Marcus to move faster without raising his voice. At the 30-foot mark, the sounds in the wall stopped. The shaft ladder to the surface was 15 feet ahead. Something was at the base of it. Ray's lamp caught it in a narrow angle. A hand on the lowest rung. He fixes on this detail in the recording and does not embellish it. He describes it dimensionally. The span from the outer edge of the thumb to the outer edge of the smallest finger, measured by his estimation against the rung width he knew to be 14 inches, approximately 11 inches across. The skin was dark and dry. The tendons running to each finger were individually visible, raised against the surface like cable under tension. 4 fingers, not 5. It released the rung. Ray does not know why. He does not theorize. He moved to the ladder and climbed, and did not look down, and came out of shaft 3 at 9:29. Dale came out 8 seconds behind him.
Marcus Webb came out last. At dawn, Marcus was found seated against the primary equipment trailer, unhurt, coherent, with complete recall of everything up to entering the equipment shed. The 6 hours between the shed and the surface did not exist for him, not suppressed, absent. Ray sat with him for an hour that morning. Marcus did not appear frightened. He appeared subtracted, like something had gone through him carefully and taken only what it needed. They left the site at 6:14 in the morning on October 14th. 3 vehicles, all 6 crew members accounted for. The ventilation line was still inside shaft 1. The core sample equipment was still in the shed. 2 of the survey team's lighting rigs were still active underground, running on the surface generator, which Ray left powered on because shutting it down required proximity to the shaft portal, and he was not willing to approach it again. He does not express regret about the abandoned equipment. Basin Reclamation LLC received Ray's verbal debrief by phone at 9:30 that morning. He spoke to the operations manager, a man named Dennis Hargrove, who listened without interruption for 11 minutes. At the end, Ray told him 3 men had encountered something inside the shaft network that could not be explained by any geological, biological, or mechanical category he had available. He told Hargrove the site needed to be reported to someone with the authority to restrict it permanently. Hargrove told him to write it up and submit it through the standard incident reporting portal. Ray submitted a written report on October 17th, 4 pages, specific dates, times, measurements, names. He attached Patricia Osmond's field log excerpts, Gordon Fox air quality records, and 3 photographs, the bent vent cover from shaft 4, the cleared debris pile at the shaft 7 collapse zone, and a single image taken by Patricia inside the cavity showing the scored walls and the central depression.
He received a response on October 31st. It was not from Dennis Hargrove. It was from a legal firm in Reno representing Basin Reclamation LLC. The letter stated that Ray's incident report contained unverifiable claims inconsistent with the geological profile of the site, that submission of such claims through official channels constituted a potential breach of his contractor confidentiality agreement, and that he was requested to sign an attached non-disclosure agreement within 14 days in exchange for full payment of his contracted fee. Ray had already been paid. The payment had cleared on October 20th, before the legal letter arrived. He did not sign the NDA. No further communication came from Basin Reclamation. The company's Nevada operating license was suspended in February 2004 for unrelated financial irregularities. It was dissolved by June of the same year. The mining permit for parcel 7114C was pulled on October 17, 2003, the same day Ray submitted his incident report. The reason listed in the county record is a single phrase: geological instability. Patricia Osmond declined to be interviewed for this account. She responded to one written inquiry with 2 sentences. She confirmed she had been on site during the dates in question. She said she stood by her field notes and had nothing to add. Ray still has the photograph of the cavity walls. He has not shown it to anyone yet. Ray contacted Clifford Winnemucca for the last time on October 28, 2003, 14 days after leaving the site. He had waited because he did not know what to ask. When he finally called, he had one question. He asked Clifford what the thing in the mine was. Not what it was called, what it was. Clifford was quiet for a moment. Then he said he was not going to answer that question because the name carried specific implications Ray was not prepared to manage. What he would answer, he said, was what it did, how it operated, because that was the information Ray actually needed.
It did not hunt for food. It established territory by occupancy. It learned the precise number of living things that entered its space. It retained that count indefinitely. It did not forget. It did not approximate. The count it held when Ray's crew entered that cavity on October 13th was the same count it had held since the last time humans had gone past that debris wall, which, based on the 1961 internal report, was the 2 workers who died in the collapse. It had been holding a count of 2 for 42 years. Ray's crew had changed that number. Ray asked Clifford what happened when it remembered a specific individual, whether recognition transferred beyond the site, whether leaving the location ended the exposure. Clifford did not answer immediately. When he did, he said, "You already know the answer to that. That's why you're calling me from a different city than the one on your contractor registration. That's why you haven't been back to your house in Elko in 2 weeks." Ray did not respond. Clifford said, "It counts. It doesn't stop counting." The call lasted 4 more minutes. Ray does not disclose what else was said. He is still not living in Elko.